I am Alex Zygmunt, the Vice President and your host for today. So we've got a few announcements today, so I'm going to try to get through them fairly quickly. Wow, what a great crowd. I'm kind of curious, who's here for the first time? Wow. Hello. Thank you so much for coming. After this meeting, we do have a lunch where we can kind of get to know each other a little better. I highly recommend you do that. Richard will be talking about that in just a few moments. Let's see here. So, I'd like to also thank the breakfast crew who enjoyed breakfast as well. Yes, awesome. The volunteers that help us with this breakfast show up very early to get things rolling and have some fantastic food ready for us. They're an amazing breakfast crew, but we can always use extra help. So if you feel like, maybe help cutting some meats, cheeses, stuff like that, having a little bit of coffee and chatting, it's a great way to get to know people as well. We are always looking for volunteers. This organization is pretty much run by volunteers. At this time, I would like to invite you to please either turn off or silence your cell phones. And before you do that, check in on Facebook. let people know that you're here. So, Richard, would you like to come up and talk about lunch for us?
All righty then. Thank you, Alex. Okay, so immediately after this meeting at noon, we have reservations at a restaurant around the corner. This is our typical lunch thing that we're doing. Our speaker today is going to be joining us at lunch, so you can help him with more questions at lunch. And also, just so everybody knows, there's been a petition that's kind of been going around the room a little bit this morning, and it's about helping to eliminate dark money from city elections. I don't know how many people are aware that that's been going on, but we've had cities that have gone through the process of eliminating dark money, and Arizona State Legislature has then decided to overturn that. So they want dark money in the city. So we're trying to get a petition started to get something moving. Pat Blankenship is going to be bringing that to lunch as well. So the restaurant is the Mesa Community Restaurant. Go out to the street, turn right again on Country Club. It's a block and a half up on the left-hand side. It's the Mesa Community Restaurant. One last thing about this. We are looking for an alternative place to go to lunch. So if anybody has any good suggestions for me, please see me afterwards and let's talk about it. And we might choose a different restaurant in the future. But I gather some people don't particularly like that restaurant, although it's a lot of fun. Yesterday we had over 20 people in that restaurant after the Inquiring Minds, and it was pretty awesome. So, I mean, but still, if we can find a different restaurant that everybody's comfortable with that's close by, please let me know. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Richard. We have a massive box of books back in the back. Please toss in a book and take as many books as you want. We were overflowing with books. Also on each of the tables and right up here at the front in our information desk, we do have information regarding the American Humanist Convention. They have extended their enrollment period to May 14th. Please check out the information. Please attend. It's always a fantastic time. At this time, I'd like to invite our good friend to come up here and talk to us about Camp Quest. Jennifer. Come on. All right. So every year, HSGP sponsors or donates towards sending a kid to camp. So today, I'd like to present to you a check from HSGP for $1,200.
Well, we put this in the pot, and part of the money goes to buying things that we need, and this is and part of it goes to helping kids get to camp. We do give financial aid to kids who need it and qualify for it, and this will cover almost 2 full camperships, and for kids who are applying for financial aid, it'll cover more than that. So this is great. 2 kids get to go. We have 45 kids signed up for camp this year.
Oh, awesome.
It's a little bit of a lower number. We normally are closer to 50, but we really could use like at least one more female volunteer, if anybody can spend a week at camp the last week of June to help with the, one of the girls' cabins and with activities and stuff. It's really fun. It's free to you. You get all your free room and board. Just have to work really hard, that's all. So the camp is last week of June. We thank you so much because we're nonprofit and we don't make any money, and this helps so much. You guys are one of our biggest supporters in many ways, and we really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And while you're still here, Jennifer, as you know, Andre Soleil has stepped down from the member-at-large position, which is essentially our communications chair. Jennifer has graciously stepped up and taken on the role full steam ahead, but in order for her to be on the board, we need dues-paying members to go to vote. In other words, voting in favor of having Jennifer White on the board as member-at-large communications chair. At this time, I'd like to invite dues-paying members to please vote either yay or nay. All yay, all yay.
You raise our hands.
Raise your hands, please.
Yay.
Any nay? So, at this time, Jennifer White is now an official member of the board as our communications chair. One other thing that is happening soon, next Sunday speaker meeting, which is in 2 weeks, we will be holding a vote as far as the change towards our bylaws. We are including a harassment policy, which will include things like sexual harassment, code of conduct, not only for the board and members and guests. We'd like for you to visit our website, see what changes we'd like to make to the bylaws. Please read them, criticize them if you need to, but that vote will be held again in 2 weeks on May 20th. So we have a number of events here at the center. Tomorrow we have the Smart Recovery meeting right here at 7 p.m. Then after that we have an amazing speaker. This is a special event. Fred Edwards will be talking about the power of humanist values in difficult times. I highly recommend doing that. I've met him a couple times. He's a great person to speak to. And that is Thursday, May 10th at 6 p.m. right here in the main meeting room. And then on Saturday, Anita will be doing her monthly crochet project wherein we take plastic bags and turn them into sleeping mats for people who are experiencing homelessness. Then that same night, we're having game night. It's a co-hosted event between us and Mensa, is that correct? Mensa, yes. That's at 6:30. That same Saturday in the morning, something kind of cool. It's not really an HSGP sponsored event, but one of our former speakers is holding at KGZ Explore Arizona Storyfest and Expo. Roger Naylor will present his Love Letters to Arizona. Pretty cool event. I think that's going to be awesome. If you want some more information, come up here and talk to me about it. Also visit our meetup and website. Then next Sunday at 6 p.m. right here, we're holding Philosophy Under the Influence. We're talking about at 5. That's right. We are starting earlier. We're starting at 5 p.m. We're moving it forward so that we can people get dinner and that sort of stuff. Then we are doing a volunteer outreach program where we're going to be helping St. Mary's Food Bank Saturday, May 19th at noon. If you want more information, please come up here and talk to me. And then last announcement as far as meetings go, we have next Sunday speaker meeting will be the Intro to Future Consciousness, The Path to Purposeful Evolution by Tom Lombardo. So, how do we create a good future? The deceptively simple question is the central challenge of human life. Indeed, the question brings to center stage the most distinctive and empowering capacity of the human mind to have emotions, desires, and goals about the future, to consciously imagine, anticipate, think about, and evaluate envisioned futures, and with the foresight and planning to intentionally pursue preferable futures. So it's already sounded pretty cool. So,
Alex,
yes.
I'm sorry, you missed one.
Oh, did I miss one? Oh.
Humanities Project?
Yes, that's right.
Do you have it there?
We do. I don't have that on my list, but we do have a humanities project. What is that topic going to be on?
It's called, too bad Mike's not here, but it's called Odyssey.
Odyssey.
And what we are asking people to do is to come and share some kind of a trip or odyssey. It could be an actual trip they took, or a dream trip, or a fictional trip, or whatever it is, something that affected you, that maybe changed your course, changed your life, or something that's really dear to you, or you learned something, just something that you can share with us about some kind of odyssey in your life, however you want to define it.
Awesome. I think it's going to be a fantastic
Friday,
experience.
7 o'clock, 7 to 9, BYOB. We'll have some good snacks. If you want to bring snacks, to share, that's good. It's this coming Friday? Yes. It's always the second Friday of the
The
month.
11th, is that?
And while you're up,
11th.
I'd like to invite you to and do your humanist
My
minute.
minute? Okay.
Maybe.
Every Sunday speaker, we have a humanist minute. It's something really cool.
Yeah. Can you? Wanna leave it right there, or- I'll put it- Yeah. Okay. I'm going to tell you a riddle. Now, and there's a nice pretty picture. And now when I tell you this riddle, it's an old riddle, so several of you, I'm sure, have heard it before. So this is what I would like you to do. If you have heard it before, please don't say anything to anybody else. And if you haven't heard it before, I want you to think about, try to figure out what the answer is, but without, just in your own mind. Don't share it yet, okay? So here's the riddle. A man and his son are in a terrible car accident, and the father dies. The boy is rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery, but just before he goes into the operating room, the surgeon looks at the boy and says, "I can't operate on this boy. He's my son." How do you explain that? Now just think about it in your mind, and I'll show you a little video.
Oh, sorry, I like your one.
Oh.
I forgot my password. That's a problem. For widows. That's how much they return.
Aw.
What a
All right. Yeah.
Father and son are driving a car. They get into a car accident. The dad dies. His son gets rushed into A&E.
Yeah.
The surgeon says, "I can't operate. This is my son."
Okay, in that corner.
Sorry.
Okay, let's see. Sorry. One sec.
Who said, "Oh my gosh."
Well, it could be his biological father because he's adopted.
The father of the boy.
The ghost.
A priest.
The surgeon's dad.
The father.
The father died, so
Yeah.
I can't be the father.
It's up to God to say.
The wife and then I feel with the surgeon.
Biological father.
Brother. Surgeon's mother.
Oh my god, yes! It makes so much sense.
Damn! Oh, that's annoying!
That's terrible.
Oh,
No, obviously.
oh my gosh!
Ah, okay.
Oh, yeah, obviously, we all automatically assume that the surgeon's a man.
How do I close it now?
Okay.
All right, how many people have heard that riddle before? Okay. Now, those people who have not heard the riddle before, this calls for some humanist honesty. How many did not get the right answer? Isn't it embarrassing? When I first heard it, I was too. Well, it turns out that that's a schema. It's a gender schema, which is it's a way that humans make sense of a complicated world, and it's very hard to change a schema. There was some research done in 2014 at Boston University by one of the psychology professors there and another woman, and they asked, I didn't bring my little paper, but I do have the whole article about the research if anybody's interested in all the details, but there was something like 170 BU students plus 103 children from the Brookline summer camps. Now this is already skewed toward affluent, well-educated people, this research, and only 14% of the Boston University students, many of whom had mothers who were doctors, and about 15% of the children got the right answer. They did gymnastics without coming to the right answer. So it just goes to show that this here and now, it has gotten better, and the psychologist who, the psychology professor, she said that these can be changed, these schemas can be changed, but the progress is glacial. So we just have to keep at it and keep at it. Yes.
Has anybody then given the answer that the two men were married?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, there are possibilities. There are plenty of families with two fathers. Yep, but nobody guesses the simple answer. Well, that's not true, not nobody, but a lot of people. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you for that. And if you'd like to share humanism, it's something that you think is interesting or fun or about humanism or something just really cool, come up here, talk to me, and we'll set you up for next time around. At this time, I'd like to invite Anita to give a couple announcements.
Yeah, a few points. All of the events that Alex talked about are on our website, hsgp.org, and also our meetup page. Okay, now, I just want to point out that we have our tag sale board here. These are expenses that we have for the building every month or yearly. If anybody would like to help or contribute to one of them, just come up later and look at this and see which one you'd like to donate for. We own the building, and it costs money to run the organization. Many of you may know that Bruce and Kathy Pettigrew have been collecting and delivering donations for Tumbleweed Center for Youth Development for several years. We always need donations. You might have noticed there's a list of items on each table that they need. This is an ongoing project, so anytime you have something that you feel you can donate, please bring it in, and there's a box in the back that you can put it in. Now on a not so happy note, many of you know Randy Jones. He's been a member here for many years. He had been taking care of his elderly father for years. His father just passed away earlier this week, or last week. If anybody would like to send a card, oh, I don't have his address. I can put it on the newsletter for next month. But there will be a memorial service at the VA Cemetery at 23029 North Cave Creek Road. I believe that's Phoenix. It will be Wednesday, May 16th at 10 o'clock in the morning. Or if anybody would like to send a card, I can give you his address, I believe. Anyway, we'll check on that at another time. I'm not sure if I have his current address. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita. At this time, I'd like to invite Pam to introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm I'm very excited about our speaker, and I know he's not here this morning, but to thank Andre for talking to Kevin about getting him here, because Andre is the one who invited you in the first place, I recall. Our speaker today is Kevin Bolling, and he is the Executive Director of the Secular Student, can we say the National Secular Student Alliance?
It is, yeah.
He has served in this position since 2017. Kevin brings with him 20 years of nonprofit leadership experience. His career has included over 10 years of student association management and on-campus program development from Los Angeles to Boston. For 10 years, Kevin served as the executive director of the California Thoroughbred Horsemen's Foundation, a charitable trust serving the healthcare needs of the industry's largely immigrant workforce. Most recently, Kevin served as the director of the philanthropy at the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles, a major LGBTQ arts advocacy organization whose youth outreach work has moved more than thousands of hearts and minds across the U.S. toward embracing LGBTQ equality. So please help me welcome Kevin.
So thank you. It's a pleasure being here with you today. So I think this area, having a building like this and having sort of a community center like this, unfortunately is a bit of a novelty. But it's wonderful. It's nice to be here and to sort of see this in practice and the community that it definitely develops and brings. So thank you very much. Hal has been a great supporter of ours for a number of years, so it's great for me to finally get to meet him in person. And we also have some of our students here from the local SSA chapter as well. So good. What I want to do today is talk to you about the Secular Student Alliance, and then also talk to you about the upcoming generation of students and what they look like, and really these are going to be the future generation that comes in and fills and occupies and does programming in spaces like this and our communities. So it's an interesting generation, and I think a little bit different than a lot of people think of or what we have heard. And then also talking just a little bit about the statistics, because I'm not going to get that word out. And also getting into a little bit of the politics and talking about sort of where they are and those sorts of things. And then we'll have some time for question and answer. And so again, barrage me. I'm happy to answer to whatever. So a little bit about the organization. So we're the only national secular organization dedicated to working with students. So primarily in college and universities, but we also work with students in high schools. And this fall, we should be able to start working our first chapter in a middle school. So we continue to expand and grow. And as I mentioned, we're working with the future leaders of the secular movement and the future leaders in our communities and in politics. So we recognize that our students are going to be involved in lots of things, nonprofits and business and politics and those things. And we like the idea that we are instilling strong secular values in our future leaders of our country. So for some of our mission and what we look for doing is providing a space where students can proudly express their secular identity. And I'm going to talk in some generalizations just about the students when we sort of get to that. But we also look at being an umbrella. So we intentionally choose the word secular because we recognize students coming in may have different labels that they call themselves or may not have really established a label yet. So we intentionally use an umbrella term of secular to include humanist and atheist and agnostic and free thinkers and skeptics. And the people just go, I don't know. And that's good. We want them to have a place where they can have those conversations. Because in our societies, there's not a lot of places where they can do that. And I love it that our SSA chapters for a lot of students are places where they can have conversations about belief or non-belief. And just that'd be something normal. Because there's, again, very few places that we can do that. We like to build welcoming communities, as I sort of say, and promoting secular values. It's, great you don't believe in God. That tells me very little about you. We want to know what you do stand for and what your values are and what's important to you. And so part of what we do is like, great, you don't believe in God, let's move on from there, now what? We want to put your values into action. And so we look at promoting lifelong activism. So it's great we have you in college. We want you to take those skills and to take that activism and to continue on with your life. And again, future leaders and future members of the secular community. So we Right now we have about 275 chapters, so we've seen actually a lot of good growth recently. We started out in the fall. I started, again, this is about my first year, so I started right at the beginning of the fall with the organization. And we really focused on strengthening our groups. We're like, okay, we've got a good core of groups. Let's talk about just internal structure and strengthening. And so we really put some emphasis and focus there. And one of our groups in Missouri, the first week of school tripled in size. So Texas doubled in size. We had another school that had a meeting room at the university, and so many people showed up they had to move rooms because it wasn't big enough, and they had to do it again. They moved rooms twice. So we're really seeing some good growth. Our chapter in Logan, Utah has 150 members now. So we're going some really good growth. And so our second part, we said, okay, great. So in January, it was like, we're going to play around with figuring out what works in helping our student organizations now grow in numbers. So, we want more numbers of groups across the United States. We want to be more schools and those sorts of things. And so in January, we started playing around on social media and started figuring out what worked and what didn't. And from the first 3 months of the year, so January, February, March, we had 30 new organizations start. So we're seeing some great growth. And that's a good thing. Thank you. So it wasn't that long ago that about 1 in 4 of the U.S. population, 1 in 5 of the U.S. population was non-religious. We're now about the new Pew information from a couple years ago is about 1 in 4. And for students, it's about 1 in 3. So you can quickly see what's happening with that. And so that's the non-religious. We look at sort of the non-theist, so, what we look at hardcore. So we're really getting, it's about 13%. So the population that we're working with, that is sort of our heart and soul of our organizations, is a much smaller demographic. But again, we make sure that we work with the people who are sort of questioning and who have, may have some doubts and those sorts of things, because we want them to be that space. So we're opening ourselves up to a larger audience and being able to work with the students. So good. I want to talk, again, the next generation, the up and coming. So hopefully one day we'll join you and replace you in working with this facility and with the communities and those sorts of things. So Beloit College they do a study every year, and they look at the mindset of the students and what are some significant things that have come into their life that help frame their mindset and the way they interact and perceive with the world. So since they've been born, the U.S. has been at war the entire time. So since they've been here, been born, there has been a Clinton and a Bush running for office the entire time. They have no idea that Bob Dole was ever on TV hawking Viagra. They have no idea who Newt Gingrich is. So when they were potty training, we had hanging chads in Florida. Yeah, bring back some memories. So Sandy Hook was their Columbine, and I think a lot more recently, the March for Our Lives and how energetic and active the students are about gun control and sensible gun laws. And that's been a great resurgence, but clearly something that's been affecting our students. Vladimir Putin's been leading Russia the entire time. The only thing that existed as far as money in Europe is the euro. Other currencies didn't exist, for them. They've never seen a billboard ad for cigarettes. So cloning has been a standard laboratory regular procedure since they've been born. So vaccines have always been erroneously linked to autism. We've always had the West Nile in the United States. So when you say Fraser Ali, this is who they think about. Snowboarding's always been an Olympic sport. The only place you go to buy your plane tickets, where else would you go, is the internet. So they've always had the nanny cam to check in on the babysitter. Sex in the City's always been there. So has SpongeBob. He's always been at the bottom of Bikini Bay. They will argue with their parents what the first episode of Star Wars is.
This is wrong.
They've always been able to watch TV on demand whenever they want, without a schedule, and skip over the commercials. So email or texting is much more important to them than email. So, and Christians and the Lutherans have always agreed on how you get into heaven. So again, those are some generalizations that describe the generation. So I think a lot of people, we had the baby boomers, and then we sort of move into generation X, Y, and Z, which we really refer to our millennials. And there's a lot of assumptions that come with the millennials. One about being a little, apathetic, and those sorts of things. And I think we're going to really show you that this new generation, and really we're getting into Generation Z. So the current students in college were born about 1998, and again, that's a generalization. And so they're bordering on Generation Z, and so we have X, Y, and Z, and I always say, we're out of alphabet, so last generation. So for a lot of our students, they're described as technoholics. So they're usually on about 5 different screens. The technology is integrated into their life. And so, and the things that they're doing are temporary and private. So at the beginning of social media, you just put sort of everything out there. And now you've seen the platforms come on where it's individual messages and it's private and things are temporary. So there's been a definite switch, I think, from what we're used to, and where we're sort of more and more getting that. And I think, the current things with Facebook and, and just the data mining with the policies, I think you're going to see more of this information, but they're already there. It's also real-time connection. So where rather than you calling someone and you're hoping they're on the other end of the line and you're leaving a message on their answering machine that they've got to go and play when they get home, this is video chat, live, in-person sort of stuff, multiple texting, live interaction, basically with anyone in the world. And so this is the sort of connections and sort of things that they are very much fundamentally used to. The other thing, they're going to be super creators, and we're starting to see just a new technology and new innovation that's just coming out of nowhere and all of a sudden just being popular. And they're going to continue that, and they're also extremely collaborative. So again, with this real time, the limitations of sort of being in the same space as someone isn't important, and they can do have interactions with anyone all over the world and pull from that information. And the amount of information that they have because of the internet, especially when we can look at things in the secular realm, they have much more access to those things and much more information, so it's great. Some of the things that, for major sort of things in our society that have effect on their lives, one is global warming and climate change. The big economic downturn of 2008, so huge, a lot of things. And then the uprising of the in the Middle East, and so coming up with looking at sort of the new generation and new politics and those sorts of things. So huge aspects on their life, and they're also multitaskers. So I think we've heard that a lot, but this is really where they're trying to do multiple things all at one time. And again, if they're on 5 screens and they're looking at real life and those sorts of things, there's a very different perspective that a lot of our younger generation is looking for when they're coming in. They're also the first generation that has an African-American president, that has same-sex marriage just as marriage. And this is supposed to be the first woman president, so we're close. But the first of the real sort of legitimate female president in the United States as far as a potential candidate. So we started talking about a little generalization of the generation coming up. And again, some of the Pew study information, we're really looking at that sort of hardcore, what the atheist is. And again, the one out of 3 now of college students are looking at being non-religious. So we know 1 in 4. We're currently 1 in 3 being unaffiliated, and about 13% of those identify as atheist agnostic. And that's really our core with the Secular Student Alliance. So I know the 2 things you never talk about, religion and politics. We're going there. So we also want to look sort of where this upcoming generation, and largely, and for this is really the secular generation. So where are sort of those unaffiliated, non-religious youth, where are they sort of aligning themselves? So 56% of them identify as liberal. And you'll find that the students today aren't really identifying with labels really as much anymore. So, and whatever they are. So they're just they're like, this is just me, and this is who I am, and this is what I believe. And so while we look at that 56%, I think in looking at some of what they believe in and what their values are, shows you a very different perspective. So 74% that the government should help the poor. 87% abortion should be legal. 94 saying homosexuality is no big deal whatsoever. So 79% we should have stricter laws protecting the environment. And then 83% say the right and wrong depends on the situation. So this idea that someone or something or imaginary thing is telling us what is right and wrong is quickly leaving this generation. And they're believing, no, you know what? My values are what determine that. And the situation, I need to look at the situation and make those judgments for myself. And I think for the secular community, that's a great thing for us to understand about where a lot of the students are coming from and what this is. And you can see a lot of these things are fairly liberal policies and stances when we look at our society as a whole. And so I think, there's a definite leaning of where our students are coming up and what's important to them. So some of the recent Pew study data, so looked at the past 20 years that the average voter is becoming much more college educated, which again has sort of liberal leanings as we go. And so the college experience today, so of registered voters, it was 55%, and now we're looking at 76 or 67% are registered voters that have college experience. So 20 years ago, 1 in 10 of Democratic voters were unaffiliated or non-religious. Today it's 1 in 3 for the Democratic Party. Huge change in what we're looking at. So just for the Republican Party right now, it's about 13%. And that has also been changing as well. So again, in 1997, it was about 9% were religiously unaffiliated in the Democratic Party, and now we're at 33%. And so I think one of the interesting things, we're now that if you look at religions, the non-religious are 33%, and the next group up is the Protestants at 18%. We're almost double in size of what that is. So there's a lot of things happening. One of the things that I was talking about is our students. They're active. And they're really invested in what's happening in the world and what's in our society and what's in our communities. And we see that in our campuses all the time about what programming they're choosing to do and how they're getting involved in their communities. And so it's really exciting for us. And we look at, they're also on their campus are dealing with a lot of different sort of faith-based organizations. And so I think we were talking earlier today, and they said that there's 130 different faith-based organizations at ASU, and 1 SSA.
U of A.
U of A.
Yeah.
Okay, U of A. I was like, no, ASU's here.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, so that gives you something. And what we look at on a standard college is about 40 religious groups and 1 SSA. So the disparity there is quite a lot. And you'll find that a lot of these religious ministries are working to sort of undo this trend where more and more students are becoming unreligious. So some of your very conservative groups, your conservative Christian groups got together and did a study, and this is their own numbers, saying that about 70% of conservative Christian students coming into college their first year, 70% will leave the religion. So stop going to church, stop participating, leave the religion altogether. And so they were like, okay, we've got to do something about this, because these are not acceptable numbers to them. So 12 of the largest national ones got together and formed a consortium. And so they really looked at what can we do to sort of undo this trend and reverse the trend. I think the switch over will throw my slides off a bit. But again, about God's presence in our schools. And so this is one of their slides. So they started Campus Link, and you can see all the different organizations that are involved in this, and they're super highly organized. So this is one of their weekly calls that they do to help students from across the country become informed of what they can do and how they can be involved in those sorts of things. So very intentional. So they're looking at, again, changing that stem of students becoming unaffiliated. And they've realized that the first 72 hours are crucial. Again, this is their studies, which is backed up by multiple other studies when you look at student involvement. First 72 hours. So that's not when classes start on a campus. That's when the student first steps foot on the campus. So if they're moving into their residence hall, they have people there who are in their shirts, whatever their organization is, helping them move in, getting them to a community center, getting to a church, and those sorts of things. So, and they're looking at reversing those numbers, and their goal is to double the amount of conservative Christian students in schools. So, and again, the Campus Link is their new online tool. And basically what they're doing is they're identifying students in high school and figuring out where they're going to college. And before they ever leave high school, they're going, well, here's this church, and here's this church, and here's this ministry, and here's this ministry. They're making that path as easy as possible for the students. I give them credit. It's brilliant. Yeah. It's also millions. I mean, they dumped literally millions of dollars into setting this up. But it's a fascinating system. And so again, the whole thing is they want to sort of, ignite God's presence on American colleges and campuses. And again, they're looking at campuses nationwide. So, and so they also have tools online that students can download. So if there is an atheist student or a non-religious student, there's actual tools that a freshman can download to have a conversation with that person so that they can share God's love and God's word with them. So, and really what this is about building community for them. So the students are coming on campus, they don't have a friendship base, they don't really know anyone, and so if we can get them in that first 72 hours and get them in a community, we know that they're much more likely to stay. And so there's a really big push on the colleges and campuses. Again, highly organized, really active in their Word of God, and extremely well funded. So this is a little bit about our students, and I want to share some of the things they're doing and a little bit about them. It's a privilege of me to be able to go to work every day and hear the different stories. And again, we have about 275 groups. Every one of them is different. So depending on where they are in the country and whether it's rural or urban or whether in a conservative area or not, the size of the school, they're all different. And that's part of the fun part of us and getting to work with them. So they clearly believe in the separation of church and state. Some of their heart and core and a lot of their programming revolves around that. They're deeply passionate about saving the environment protection. Issues of racial justice are not issues to them at all. They fully embrace that. Also, LGBT rights, fully embrace those. We have great relationships with a lot of the different racial organizations on campus as well as GSAs on campus. So issues of women's health care, not an issue for them whatsoever. They fully support that, as well as making sure that our campuses are safe places and ending sexual harassment and sexual assault. So when we talk about immigration, our students are right on in saying, hey, this country is built from immigrants, and we need to continue that. And so the conversations of immigration, largely a part of our students are all on board, and supporting the Dreamers as well. This is actually a picture of some of our students. We had about 5 of our chapters were in Washington for the March for Our Lives. We had student chapters all over the United States participating. So we had about 1,000 of these posters that we sent with them. We said, here, take those, whatever you have left over, because we knew we'd have a bunch left over, we just give out. So they said, they had 1,000 of them, and they said in about 5 minutes they were gone. As soon as they get them out of the box, people were taking those. And what we love is, it's talking about policy and change and getting our students politically active. But we also have on the bottom secular values in action. And so we know people saw these signs and we know people were holding these signs who probably had never heard of secular values ever before. And now they've got to think about that, what that is. And so this is a population where you had people from all over, all different backgrounds coming together. And we just love that hopefully we made some people think about secular values. And that came from our students being active and involved. They've also been super involved in voter registration. So across campuses and in communities around their campuses, we're doing a big push with American Atheist and the Secular Coalition of America this fall for voter registration. Clearly, we're heading up the student component and getting information out. And then following that, the thing to go out and vote. So secular values voter. SCA is doing a big push with this. Please join on board. It's super, super, super important. But I think when you look at the Women's March, you look at the March on Our Lives, and I think you look what's happening with the teachers in the states across the country, there is this really sort of energized interjection into politics. And we really are hopeful about what this is going to mean for our students in this upcoming election. They're also super involved in their communities. So we push, and highlight community service projects on Martin Luther King Day and Cesar Chavez Day about getting involved in their campuses, what their campuses are already doing, and also doing their own. So we have lots of our student organizations who are helping the homeless and doing things in their community and providing services and those sorts of things. So you could have a great facility. I'm sure you're involved in lots of, and some of the conversations you're having earlier about things that are coming up in those sort of community service projects as well. So the question is, are you ready for them? So I know when I go to some of the the larger organizations, the other national organizations, and sort of look, the demographics of our students are very different than what we see in the sort of at those conferences and those sorts of things. So to give you just a little bit about the statistics of our student leaders and our student members, their demographics are fairly the same. So it's about 50-50 male-female, which we love that we have sort of this equal footing in positions of leadership and membership within our organization for men and women. We know that about 40% of our membership are people of color, which again, something you typically don't see in the larger organizations, the larger national organizations, but this is what's coming up. We know that for LGB, we know that there's about 20% of our leaders and our members fit in that category, and about 5% are trans and gender nonconforming. So again, a very different picture about what's coming up through the secular movement, and what I think some of the organizations will be experiencing. We look at being a pipeline for the secular community. So Camp Quest. So we have a great partnership with Camp Quest. One, a lot of our students probably were in a Camp Quest somewhere. So we do have a large percent, a good number of our students come from sort of your traditional atheist families. So we love, that happens. We also have a lot of students who still can't even tell their parents that they don't believe. And it's actually probably a higher percentage are still in that category. But a lot of our students also volunteer with Camp Quest in the summer, and have amazing experiences about volunteering and working with that in the summer. So we always look at promoting that and continue to form that relationship. And then we're also a feeder. We recognize to the other national organizations. And so almost all of these, there is an alum, a former student of SSA, either employed or volunteering in all the major national organizations. Of course, we are one of those. Our students, our workers have also been former SSA members as well. So that tells you we're involved and active. And we want to make sure that we continue. So we're doing a lot of internal things to make sure that we're continuing this pattern. And some of the things I want to talk to today is about, when you look at the sort of the local groups of these national organizations, some of the things you can be doing to sort of making your organizations a little bit more welcoming to some of the students and ways you can support them. So, and again, it's all about making a connection. And so we sort of, you're meeting here, they're on their campuses, we want to bridge those gaps and make those a little bit easier. We know a lot of the organizations use Meetup. So again, there was a Meetup for this organization. A lot of our students aren't. So they're looking at different technology and those sorts of things. And that's fine. We often we hear from our students when we're going to the other organizations, what's one of the first things you think that they say about the other organization?
They're old and white.
You're gonna know, but we're a fun group. It's okay. So there is a generational divide. We have to acknowledge that. So, and that's okay. There's lots of things we can do. The students today, they think that they're the busiest times of their lives. And a lot of them they are. They're going to school full time, they've got familial responsibilities. Odds are they're working part-time or full-time while they're in school. So, and then we want them to be involved in SSA and in their community and putting their values in action and those sorts of things. So they're pretty involved and they're pretty active. So finding time is important for them. So we want to make that as constructive as possible. And when we look at this, it's all about making relationships. And so we want, your organization and our organizations to be able to come together and have a great relationship. And that takes a little practice and a little purpose. And when we think about what they think of when they first think of a group, and even younger groups where the average age may be 30 or those things, to some causes that's still old people. So you're looking at it from a different lens. But whenever we do that, we always want to make sure we're looking at who's probably the best person, the best one from the group to make that initial action. So so it's often important for the groups to think about that. Who's the really one to help bridge that gap? Because you typically have only a couple chances. Evan is the chair of our board, and is very active here in the Arizona community. He always says, when the students come and they've got an idea, and they come to your group with the idea, and the first thing you do is say no, it's probably your one chance. So we always want to make sure that the starting those relations, we really think about who's the best one to make that sort of relationship and who's to build that bridge. So one of the things we often hear is, in the things, we always invite them to our group and they never come. We hear that all the time. And one of our first things is, let's turn that around. Go to their events. Go support them. Find out, if they're having a meeting, great. If they're having an event, go. You get to see them in action. You get to see what they're doing. You get to see, what's important to them. You learn more about them, and they get to see you. They know that you're supportive, and that's a huge, crucial, sort of important thing. So when you go, we often say, what can you do to help? Ask them. And again, all of our groups are different, depending on where they are in those things. They'll tell you. First they may go, not many people have asked us that. And it may take them a minute, but they'll tell you what you can do to help. It's the evenings. Go to their meetings, their events. When you go, listen. I think oftentimes that we interject and we want to help. This is their organizations. It's their programs. So go there and listen. And the first thing is to sort of exploratory and learning more about them, and you make your world much more open and accessible to them. Allow the students to be in charge. Again, their events, what's there going on. And when they ask, it's great to give a suggestion or two. It's not the time you give the term paper on, here's things we could do differently. But helping them out with those things is great. Always be positive and build trust. And that's, again, those are just sort of key things about building relationships with any group, and that works for our students as well. When we get to move on a little further, we talk about becoming a mentor. And I think Bart was the Humanist chaplain at USC and built this amazing group of students there. And his goal was to be a mentor for them. So, it's beyond the sort of, I'm just going to go support you, but I'm just going to be a mentor for your personal development. And it's a different, it's a continuum on the relationship and a much stronger and deeper relationship that we have. So that's helping the students plan their meetings and their events. Not doing it for them, sort of asking the questions that they may not have been thinking of and those sorts of things. Again, you're in the background and they're the ones out leading the charge and leading the meetings and leading the events. Helping them plan the events, attending their events and bringing other people. They want to know that you're supporting what they do. Sending them that encouraging text. So inviting them out to coffee or bringing them to another event that they may not be able to afford or go to as well. And then as you build the line, you get down to internships and career advice and those sorts of things. And again, we're looking at really what we're doing is putting them back into our communities, building that pipeline, that continuum, and really then we're talking about the future leadership again with that. So there's no magical wand. I can't tell you exactly how to do it. Again, they're all different. Every student is different. Every organization is different. And by listening and building trust and building those relationships is how you find out how you can do that with your communities and those sorts of things. Because you want them to come to your organizations. We want them to come to your organizations, even if this is how they're going to see you in the beginning. So we want them to be there, and it's about building a community. And you know what that is. Look at you here now. Look at this building. You get that sense. So it's good. What can the organizations do? When you have meetings and those things, fun and active. So, we sometimes get into we're having this great theoretical discussion on, some of our students would love that. But those beginning things is when you want fun, active, those friendships things sort of happen you get to talk to each other, you're doing something, there's an end product, much easier for our students. Volunteering and making a difference. So inviting them to have an active role. One of our students for the Free Thought Day in Sacramento, one of our students runs the entire main stage. Like, she just takes that on, and they know they can count on her, and they've built this relationship up. That is her thing. She runs that main stage, and like on time, on a clock. So she's fantastic. The other thing, looking at sponsoring a scholarship. So we have the Tucson group actually sponsors every year 2 scholarships for students to attend our annual conference. So we've been having it for 17, this is our actually 18th year now. So I do have some, if you want some information, I have a few postcards up here on that. This year it's in Columbus, Ohio. That's a great thing to do, is get, and again, you're fostering more of their leadership development, their secular values. We're putting it in. And then, having them attend a conference, we have some people who call us up and say, hey, I want to, the Humanist conference is coming up in Las Vegas. I want to help students get there. Great. We help facilitate that process. We want them to have this interaction. We want this pipeline to be fulfilled. The Free Thought Loop in Central Florida and Sarasota actually sponsor 2 scholarships. So in the fall, we do a series of scholarships for our students. If you're not on our mailing list, this is like some of the best stories you will ever hear about what our students are doing. I thought I was super involved in college and super busy and those sort of things. When I read these descriptions about what the students are involved in, I'm like, I don't know how they do that. Some of our students are doing is incredible. So we do activism scholarships. Again, values in action is what we want. And we actually facilitate that for the Free Thought Group in Central Florida and in Sarasota. And we narrow it down, and then we join with them, and they actually pick the final winners, and they award it at their conference and those sorts of things. That's a great community interaction and integration event. But those are some, these are some higher level things that you can do to sort of help out. So again, Secular Student Alliance, we're a 501c3 nonprofit national organization. About 275 chapters across the country. So, and we're continuing to grow, and we'll be growing. We look for some really exciting growth this fall. So we invite you to become a member or a donor. So our students get free membership. We do have you can become a member and be a supporter of us. Unlike some of those other organizations, our students, we get that they're students and their disposable income is very little. So we know that's not where our support is coming. That's where our money goes. We go to support them. But we do require we fortunately have a great base of donors that help us along and have been fantastic supporters of ours, and we need that to continue. You can help start a chapter. You know people who have kids in this entire area. So whether they're going to high school or to college, or they want to form a group outside of that, we're there to help with that. We just need some contacts. And so you can help spread that word. A lot of times it's just spreading the word and making the awareness known. So if you know people who have kids, please let them know about SSA. If there's not a chapter, it's really easy to start one. It's great to sponsor a chapter as well. And I know that some of you do things with the local chapters to help sponsor them directly. So just a little bit of my information, just in case you want it. But there. So I know that was a quick sort of down and dirty of sort of the information. So if you have questions, I am more than happy to answer anything that you have, any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Kevin.
Sure.
Yep. Okay, anyone have any comments or questions for Kevin? Start with Hal.
Kevin, does the Secular Student Alliance publish and distribute a reading list for these college students?
We don't have a reading list in particular. We do provide a lot of educational material. So we have resources on our website that the students can use. So some of that's programmatic, some of that's educational, some of that's secular resources. We also share a lot of the larger resources within the secular community. And then we will do, we have a weekly email that goes out to all of our student leaders. And in that, we do put some information as far as educational resources and those sorts of things. For our upcoming conference, some of the people that will be, some of our speakers who will be at our conference will actually be sending out some reading material, suggested reading material before that, so the students can make themselves a little bit more aware and up to date and those sorts of things. But we also have a speakers bureau. And so it's members of the secular community who will go to our campuses for super reduced rates, what they would normally do, and speak to our students. And so there's a lot of that educational sort of information that comes through our speakers bureaus. And the students are the ones who pick what those topics are. So it's what's interesting to them and what they want. And so it's the best way for the students to meet their own needs. And so fortunately, we have a lot of members of the secular community who almost, in some cases, do it for free, come to our student organizations and talk with them and share sort of their information with them.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for coming, and I really thought it was a great presentation. It's a really positive message, and I think we need that. But I do have something that was discouraging to me, and I listened to NPR yesterday afternoon.
Yeah.
And they were talking about turning point.
Yes.
And that really scares me because it seems to be very divisive.
Yeah.
And also talk about dirty money. I think the Koch brothers are.
They are. So yeah, so Turning Point is quickly has become a national student organization. And it's funded by the Koch brothers and lots of very conservative sources. And their budget is millions and millions and millions of dollars, which almost happened overnight. They are sort of the antithesis to what we are. They're basically against everything. So if you're not like pure social Trump capitalism, we want nothing to do with you. They're sort of scary. I love trolling them on Twitter through the SSA account. It's become a personal joy of mine. But the fun thing, they're scary. They truly are. And when you think about those conservative organizations, there's actually organizations that are like them that actually have been deemed cults on some campuses, and the campuses are actually kicking them off. That's not going to happen with Turning Point USA, but they are super funded. The Republican Party got smartly recognized that we're going to start funding local school boards and local city councils and those sort of things. We're going to take over the local level and start working our way up. What Turning Point is their student aspect to that, and what they're doing is they're going in and funding student government elections. Why there should be funding for student government elections boggles my mind, but this is what they're going in and funding student government elections with super conservative voices and just against many of the values that we stand for, and going and trying to impact education that way. Because the reality is your student government leaders, your fraternity and sorority, your student organization leaders, our student organization leaders are the ones that continue on and become business leaders and get involved and are politicians and those are things. So they're doing a long-term bet on the future with that, and I think we're sort of the other answer to that. I think for a lot, SCA does some great work with lobbying and legal stuff. So FFRF, great friend of ours, and helping our students also. And that's what I call the quick fix. You feel good, like, okay, I stopped that one thing right now. What we're looking at is we're the long-term bet and the long-term investment. So our students, we truly believe, and we can show that they are going to impact the communities and our secular communities with secular values in the long run. My bet's on the long term with that and putting our investment there. And unfortunately, that's what's happening with TPUSA. The fun thing is also our students are getting into debates with them, and it's going really well. I mean, they're good, honest debates. And the fun thing with that, because they're coming from a little bit of that conservative religion side, what we find happening on the campuses is the Christian groups and the Jewish groups and the Muslim groups are all coming on our side because they see we're the rational ones. We're the ones talking about equality. We're talking about inclusion. We're talking about values. So it's a sort of a fun thing to watch happen because it's not working for them very well when our students start talking about what their values are. So it goes a little better for us. But yeah, long-term bets.
Any other questions, comments? Okay.
I guess I'd like to see more of. Is this on?
Yes.
I'd like to see more of. Damn it! Why are they trying to buy you? In other words, if somebody's going to give a lot of money to one side, well, I'm not going to be bought. So let's fight it on. And I don't see any advertising or commercials or anything on. Are you going to let your vote be bought?
Yeah. And and that's a large question. But I think and we're looking at that example in particular. So, Charlie Kirk, who is the president of their organization, flies around on a private plane. Like he didn't finish college. I mean, that gives you an idea of how much influence and money is actually on that side, and I think it's slightly overwhelming. So, and it's, I'm sure it feels good to be in the spotlight and those are things. The thing that I think wins in the long run, though, is that investment we're putting in the future. And truly, the investment that we're putting in the future, the students that we get to work with, that I get to work with every day, who are truly remarkable. I know what they're doing now. I can only imagine what they'll be doing in the future. And I speak personally for myself, but I think there's a lot of people who agree. I would love it if a politician came up and said, you know what? I'm not voting down party lines. I'm voting with my values, and this is what they stand for, and this is how I'm going to represent you in the elected government. Unfortunately, that's not how I see our current political situation. I would love to see a candidate who did that. And I don't care where they fall politically. If you subscribe to my values, I don't care what party you're in, I'm going to support you. But that's a whole other conversation. Oh.
Thank you everyone for, hello? Okay, it's working. So me and Nate, we just wanted to introduce ourselves. So we both run the Secular Student Alliance over at Arizona State. I'm the president, outgoing president, vice president, incoming president. Kevin did a fantastic job with describing the Secular Student Alliance on the national level and on the local level as well. From our perspective, essentially, we try to provide a place on campus for secular students to get together, talk about secular issues, build a secular community. We're literally the one secular organization on campus, so without us, that community wouldn't exist. And our meetings can range from social events where we socialize, do community building. Could also be intellectual. We talk about different issues that can vary on any sort of different topic that you can think of that are related to secularism. We'll also engage in activism where maybe we'll go down to the Capitol in Phoenix to advocate for separation of church and state and secular values, or volunteer in our communities to give back to the communities. So it's really good to have this place on campus and to contribute back to the community. So that's what we try to do.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I was trying to think. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, a question to you, Kevin, and to this gentleman. I didn't get
Angel.
I'm sorry. And to all of us, practically, there is any possible way to start not at the college level, but after they are born, the children, because in my humble opinion, the root cause of pretty much what's going on today is education, communication, education, communication, and so forth.
Yeah.
Now you can see that the religious groups are funneling millions and millions and millions of money, which your organization or any other organization, I'm not talking just secular, just liberal, progressives, they do not have the funds. So we cannot compete with their money. So we should compete up here. Now, if we start, and I'm saying we, not myself, you know, we as human beings could spread the word and try, each and every single one of us help a single mother that it's about to give birth, or has a couple children, or a real, because I'm talking about this part of the population, not that the rest is not very important, but I'm talking to start somewhere. Inner city, I'm not sure, but how can we help the teachers and starting in preschool and up to college? Not all of them get to college. Right. We know that. And not just that, how can we save the schools for Betsy DeVos's of this world?
Yeah. Again, big issue there. And we really look at, I mentioned something, yeah, we are in college universities, we're in high schools, we're about to have middle school start. Over the last probably 2 months, we had about 5 different communities in 5 different states reach out and contact us saying, one mother had a 10-year-old and the other was an 11-year-old. And they're like, we want to start something where these students can meet. And we're like, great, yes, and we don't want to do it in school. So they're elementary school, they're already just, the students talking about religious holidays, there's already a little bit of bullying and those things. We don't want to subject our students to that. So can we create something outside of the school? We're like, yes. So we are continuing to be, I like to say yes a lot more than I say no. And so we're sort of exploring this and seeing where this really leads. And yeah, I would say we have a lot of resources that are designed for students already. We put it on, download it, it's free. If we can help you, and staff, let us know what we can do. And if we get enough of that, we'll start creating specific material for that. What I'm really hopeful about, though, is again, if you look at the numbers, 1 in 5, 1 in 4, 1 in 3, we see this general trend of what's happening. We know that more and more of our students are going to getting involved in going through higher education. We see the numbers that come out of that. So now we're at 67% of our population has a college education. So we know what happens when students go through this process. So I'm very hopeful about what the future is. The other is working with students like this every day. I'm super hopeful because I know what they're doing. And doing it, and watching our students get involved in the secular movement, watching them get involved in other progressive organizations, watching them get involved in politics and those sorts of things. So Athena, who is y'all's state representative, she's actually coming to our conference to talk with the students. She is part of a organization that helps women get into politics specifically, and so Evan and I have dinner with them tonight. So it's going, hey, we'd love for that group to come to our conference and talk to our women, because we have some amazing women who can come in and go and get them into politics. Because yeah, we would love to start changing these things. We have information out for our students on facts-based sex ed, on Title IX, and where schools are getting exemptions so that they can discriminate based on religion, based on their religious beliefs, which also mean, just going on race, sexual orientation, non-belief, those sorts of things. So we are actively involved in all those sorts of things. And again, our focus is on our students. And we, there's a limit of time and money that we have. We'd love to grow and we'd love to be able to impact that more. And so we hope to be able to do that in the future and get more involved in those sort of things. If you get any of our mailings, you know that I'm right on there with Betsy all the time. I will watch her like a hawk. And just things that we're doing, and we try to get that information out to our students and affect change. And we have great partners like SCA who are doing things, the lobbying efforts and those sorts of things. So, and we know we have friends on our side in Washington as well who are helping with that. So we're fortunate that we were one of the 4 founding groups of the Secular Coalition for America. And we're one of the 19 members now. It's continuing to grow. And so we know that we're a definite friend with them. And we know they have our backs. The Freedom for Religious Foundation, anytime our students have an issue or lawsuit, they are right there with a beautifully written, legal thing that says you probably want to stop this or we're going to sue you. 99.9% of the time that works. So we have those things and great resources that the other members of secular organizations support us with as well. So we're very fortunate in that.
I just wanted to say one thing with your question. You were talking about the future. These kids are going to be raising their own kids.
Yes.
And doing this work is going to do that work.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's where we choose to invest. That's the question right now. Where we choose to invest.
Someone asked the question earlier. Why are not we saying they're trying to buy your minds? Well, all the religious groups that you put up there that are going on campus typically are funded by these libertarian conservative organizations much more than they're their congregations, because there has been a link, and it's growing stronger between particularly evangelicals and the Koch brothers.
Yeah.
That keeps it going. And the more you ask that question, is this because of religion or is this because of politics? It will strengthen your message.
Definitely, and I think there's the question of I think there's a question: are we being bought?
Yes.
But that's also, and it's important to recognize that. It's important to know where the money comes and follow the money and those sort of things. The other important thing for us is to recognize what they're selling, and so they're selling community, they're selling friends, they're selling this embrace and this instant friendship. And I mean, that's part. You guys are building community here. That's one of the things that you are doing. And that's one of the things that we need to continue as a larger secular organization and as a secular community of making sure that we're building that community as well. I think one of the other things that we fight, and we're seeing a little bit within the sort of atheist community, is some of our members going into the alt-right, which is against the values that our organization stands for completely. But when you have students who are feeling, and there's research that shows, who are feeling on the outside and aren't feeling like they're heard and they're not fitting in, and all of a sudden you have someone goes, no, you belong here. Even that extreme, they're willing to go. That makes sense, and it becomes a place where you have family. We need to make sure that we're providing that family here and now, and for those students and for those young people and for the other members of our community who may feel on the outside, that we're providing that community. And I think that goes a lot farther in solving a lot of those issues and spreading those values, and the impact that exponentially has on our communities, I think, is far greater. So we will never outspend the Koch brothers alone. This group will never outspend them in their money. It's just, the money's nuts.
Okay, last question.
Hi, Kevin. Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Nashad. I'm an ASU online student, and I just finished interning with the Secular Coalition for America in DC. I'm a member of the Secular Student Alliance here. My question as an online student is, what are your thoughts on how to engage that community? You spoke about how students have 5 screens at a time, and they're very technologically invested right now. There is a large community of online students that don't have that on-campus presence, that aren't there to see the groups on campus or to interact with them in person. So how do you engage those groups and get them active in the secular community?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that the whole sort of online education, really sort of has exploded, and that's something for us to continue to look at and how we're going to do that. One is, for me, is really looking at, and I sort of that pipeline. We want to get students involved in the local communities, and I think the local communities can be some of that for us as a home for the students to go to. Hopefully they are anyway, but if we can help set up those patterns where our students, there may not be an SSA they can get specifically involved in because you're on an online community, but hopefully in your local community somewhere we can get them into an organization that's going to be supportive and it's going to share those values and to, and share that aspect. That's right now is probably our easiest thing to be able to do. As we get a little bit more savvy with technology, we're sort of exploring different things that we can do to sort of bridge those gaps. And so, we're more getting into webinars and group meetings and video chats and those sorts of things where the physical presence isn't as important as necessary. Because we understand that's what's coming up in the future. But I think one of the most powerful things that we can do for the larger secular community is making sure that all the training and all the resources we're putting into our youth and the amazing things that we're doing, that we make sure that they stay connected in the secular community. And the larger secular community, that they stay active and involved, and they re-energize and put that energy back into the secular community. And what we need is then for the secular community to understand that means making an investment in the students and in our youth.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Thank you.
2 things left to do. Number 1, a big thank you and round of applause. Tradition here at the Humanist organization to mug our speakers.
Okay.
So
very good.
Thank you so much. This has been so great.
Thank you for coming. I do have a little bit of information that I left up on if you have students, please, you take one of these. It tells them how to got students we're recruiting. But how to get involved. There is information about our conference. If you want to be on our mailing list, these are actually our donor cards. You're welcome to fill out the top part. But also the bottom part is your contact information. So if you want to be on our mailing list and just get up to date with what we're doing, if there's things happening in the area, we'll get you involved, make sure you're involved in those sorts of things. Then feel one of these, just give this to me and we'll make sure we get you on our list and those sorts of stuff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and one quick thing, Tori, come on up. Tori has asked to give us, from the Secular Coalition of Arizona, to just give us a brief some very important updates.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I don't know if you heard, but there were some teachers at the Capitol last week. It was amazing. I wanted just to give you an update, and we'll have a full update another time when we're scheduled, but the session is over, and the teachers stormed the Capitol. Nothing I've ever seen before in my 14 years doing this work. I'm so impressed, but here's what, there's two things I wanted to update you on. One is that the public education movement is strong. To your point, I don't know your name, but you're like, what can we do? We can support public education.
Yeah.
And we can support the teachers, we can support funding our classrooms back to the $1.1 billion that's been cut from them. That's science, technology, large classroom sizes. We have to reduce those classroom sizes, return resources, so support the Red for Ed movement. It's supporting public education, it's starting young with our kids. But there's something I want to let you know about. Can I get on the computer? Okay. Have you ever heard of Diane Douglas? Yes. She's our state superintendent, right? Right. Oh, what harm can she do? A lot. I'm going to show you where to go. That I have an ask for you today. This is why I asked for the update time. You need to go to the Department of Education website. Let me show you. Is this on? Well, give me feedback, right? Okay. Here's what you need to do, and I'm sorry that the email address is so long. So if you go to your Google and you just type in Arizona Department, here, this for a second. Department of Education Proposed Science Standards. Okay? It'll get you here to their, this is where I got to it, the drafts. Oh, is this the wrong one? No. Sorry, you need to go to the proposed ones. Draft of new standards for science, history, and social science. Okay, click on something like this. Okay, so just remember this. I'm teaching you how to get to there. Okay? Because it's not easy. They have not made it easy. We've got science standards that are being drafted right now. The public review is from March 26th to May 28th. Okay, so that's coming up. What you need to know is that you can come to this website, you can fill out the survey, wherever it is, goodness gracious. Here it is, the K-12 Academic Standards website, okay? And remember, Arizona Department of Education, proposed science standards, K-12 academic standards. You need to come here and come on down to where it says the survey, science standard by grade level. Oh, this computer is different. Where is it? There's a survey on here somewhere. It's so hard to find. Oh my goodness. Survey standards. Why? Because they're dumbing down evolution and science standards across the board. We heard a rumor about this, and we are checking into it to confirm the rumor. But what we do know is that the superintendent of public instruction is trying to dumb down evolution. They're taking the science standards that were recommended to them by they're using all these science standards from this UK group, except for evolution. They changed it. They changed it to say that the UK standard says basically origins of life. That's what you need to know. And now they're saying, well, maybe not. Okay? It's important that we get into the science standards. You make your comments. How many of you are scientists? Do we have any scientists in the room? Okay, those of you raising your hands who are scientists, especially you, please go make a comment. Say, I'm a scientist. You cannot dumb down these standards. You can review all the standards here on the website and then go in and say, you do not dumb down evolution. Our students deserve better. So I need you to do this before May 28th. And I need you to let all of your friends know to do this because it's very important. And we'll give you a full legislative update sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Troy. By the way, we live stream this over YouTube, every Sunday speaker meeting and every special event that we do. So if you don't know these details right now, you can visit our YouTube channel. Just look towards the end of the video, and you can. And also, we will have instructions on how to do this on our HSGP Facebook page as well. That's it for today's meeting. I'd like everybody to give Kevin one last round of applause. Fantastic speech. We really enjoyed that. Also, don't forget that we are going to lunch right after this. Mesa Community Restaurant. If you need directions, ask either myself or Richard. Be glad to help you out there. Please help us clean up. Pick up just get the tablecloths together. If there's extra food, please take some.